This is a short preview of a special episode of Art of Darkness for Patreon subscribers only. We give the AOD treatment to acclaimed American writer Denis Johnson, whose masterpiece Tree of Smoke ranks among the best American novels on the Vietnam War, whose transgressive short fiction taught a generation how to write, and whose work sought to understand the dilemma of living in a fallen world. To get access to the full episode and other exclusive content, subscribe at patreon.com/artofdarkpod. Thank you. Then, in a soft voice you have to lean in to hear, he tells of his lengthy love affair with chemical substances, which started with rum at age 14. His father, who worked for the State Department, was stationed in the Philippines, a place where there is no such thing as underage. Quote, "When I was 21, I went into my first psych ward for alcohol," Denis Johnson said. "Drugs followed, heroin included. But I was not a constant junkie," he says. "You can't just go into a drugstore and say, 'I'll have some heroin, please.' You have to be prepared to enter into all kinds of adventures that I wasn't strong enough for." So when we
Psych
think
ward
about,
for alcohol probably means that he was binging heavily, coming off of a binge, and had DTs.
yeah,
which
probably.
can kill you.
Right.
I've read.
Right.
I've heard.
Right. Right.
Yeah, that's some serious stuff. At 21,
at
that
21
means
too.
That doesn't mean you're hitting a six pack. That means you're hitting.
Well, I thought about when I read that. Like, listen, I mean, when I was 21, me and all my friends drank a shitload of alcohol, and nobody went to the psych ward. You know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah. This is some heavy stuff,
right?
Yeah.
So, okay, so this kind of leads into a little bit of a discussion about the book Jesus' Son. Why is Jesus' Son? Have you read Jesus' Son, Kevin? No. Okay. Why is Jesus' Son a collection of short stories about the low life of a character named Fuckhead? Why is it so good? Well, probably because Denis Fuckhead Johnson was a low-life alcoholic and heroin addict throughout the 1970s. Right?
What you know.
Exactly. He takes the title of the book from the song Heroin by Velvet Underground. Which
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, the verse goes like this. I don't know just where I'm going, but I'm going to try for the kingdom if I can. I love that line. I'm going to try for the kingdom if I can. Because it makes me feel like I'm a man when I put a spike into my vein, and I tell you things aren't quite the same when I'm rushing on my run, and I feel just like Jesus' son, and I guess that I just don't know, and I guess that I just don't know. Okay, so
they're a good band, Velvet Underground. Yeah,
they're very
some bangers. Yeah.
So
we still haven't done Warhol. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
That seems like an oversight. We'll have to do that soon. If not, it's not going to be next year because we have it planned, but it's got to be the year after.
Yeah,
I gotta do him.
I think that's that's you. Yeah, it's interesting. We've never really had any disputes about who should do who. It's like anytime somebody comes up that's like obvious. Yeah,
right. We've never fought over anybody. I don't think that there would there be anybody that we would fight over. I can't even imagine.
So. Like there are people you've covered that I feel like I have enough enthusiasm I could have, but like it never feels like, oh, fuck, I wanted to do that one.
Yeah. That's so interesting. That's the Venn diagram of Brad and Kevin. It's a very interesting thing. I don't know.
It's not like Warhol. Neither of us are like, as our own artistic pursuits have anything to do with Warhol's, really.
No,
do you know what I mean?
Fair enough. Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, I don't know which one of us is the other's handler, and that's probably the sweet spot.
That's probably
one of us is probably managing the other one without even knowing it, and the agency is just like, ha.
Perfect.
Yes. All right.
So we're going to talk about Jesus' Son here, not because we're talking about the 70s period in Denis Johnson's life. I'm going to talk about Jesus' Son, even though it came out in 1992. But I'm going to talk about it here because I think a lot of the material in that book is really about him in the 70s. So if that makes sense. This is from an article in The Point, the online magazine, The Point, by a gentleman named Aaron Thier. Quote, "When I was 19, I read Johnson's 1992 story cycle, Jesus' Son, which is about a heroin addict whose friends call him Fuckhead. We all know that already. I was a novelist who hadn't written a novel yet, and I was interested in Jesus' Son because of its texture, fragmentary, episodic, surprisingly mixed in its tone. Fuckhead, who is also the narrator and who doesn't object to his nickname, has an innocence that gives the book a surprising delicacy. It's more like Catcher in the Rye than Requiem for a Dream. But I was also a drug addict, and Jesus' Son spoke to me more urgently on that level. It was a plausible rendering of my own desperation. It did not seem didactic or bogus or awkwardly self-serious like the recovery memoirs I sometimes tried to read. It offered a kind of understanding that I hadn't found elsewhere. At the same time, however, it was dense with angels and visions and skies, quote, as blue and brainless as the love of God. Okay, so let's dive into this book a little bit more, Jesus' Son. It's really an important work of American literary history, possibly as influential on late Generation X, early millennial generation of American writers as any other.
I'm going to confess to my shame that I have not read it. I pride myself. Yeah, I pride myself on being obviously to a degree cultured, and this is just an obvious glaring omission.
Yeah. Hey, check it out. I mean, it's pretty small.
I'll get a copy. I'll order a copy.
I mean, I don't know if it's even 200 pages, 135 pages.
Probably read it in like a week.
Yeah, and it goes quick too. But let's talk about a little bit more here. So here's some critical reviews of it. This is from critic J. Robert Lennon. He said, the work we all loved best was Jesus' Son. Unassuming in presentation and readable in one sitting, the book was narrated in a gently self-deprecating conversational style by a protagonist who, though unnamed, sheepishly let it be known that people call him Fuckhead. Okay, Fuckhead. Author Jim Lewis calls Jesus' Son a small collection of eccentric and addictive short stories, but unlike most books about the dispossessed, they're original and what's more, deliriously beautiful, ravishing, painful, as desolate as Dostoevsky, as passionate and terrifying as Edgar Allan Poe. Okay, so as you've probably sensed by this point, it's a series of sort of vignettes, first-person confessional kind of things about this hedonist criminal lifestyle that Denis Johnson describes him as having. And when I say hedonist criminal, it's not like they're constantly committing crimes. It's about like that low life where like you're not really a criminal, but like if you can make a quick buck by like stealing that thing, you'll do it. Right. It's not coordinated and organized, and you're not violent or anything, but you know, you're opportunistic when you feel like it and that sort of thing. Like I said, I read most of this. I read these stories in workshops, and I was at Boise State University in the 2000s, right up there with Raymond Carver and a bunch of other people. Perhaps the best known short story in here, the one that's been anthologized the most elsewhere, is Car Crash While Hitchhiking, which is a great short story. My personal favorite, though, is the story entitled just Work. And I think if we take a look at Work, you can kind of get a sense of what the whole book is like. So in this, Fuckhead is in this relationship with this woman. They're both junkies. They get into a fight on the street. He punches her in the stomach, and then like nothing else is made of that. Some people beat him up for doing it, and then he kind of just the next scene happens, which is very jarring. That's part of the magic of it too, is it has this very deliberate, the whole book has this very deliberately disorienting effect, right? Like the jump from one scene to the next, you can sort of fill in the space, but it always feels like there's something slightly illogical about moving from one scene to the next.
It sounds like when you're in the throes of a binge or you're on drugs.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know exactly how I got from here to here, but yeah.
Yep. Oof, that is not a good feeling.
Right. So after this fight, he goes to this bar, the Vine, which is like the only consistent setting that shows up in multiple stories. And he meets up with another heroin addict, this guy named Wayne, and they go to, quote, work. And basically what work is they go out to some abandoned house and they start stealing the copper out of it.
Oh yeah, okay.
But then what happens is at some point Wayne tells Fuckhead, he's like, Fuckhead asks him something about how he knew where something was in the house, and Wayne says, "This used to be my house." And suddenly it's like, it's very poignant all of a sudden, and they're standing outside, and a woman comes parasailing down the river naked. Beautiful woman with long red hair. She's naked and she's parasailing behind a boat. And, they're not even sure if Fuckhead's not even sure if he actually saw it. It's such like an angelic vision. And then later in the day, it turns out that woman was Wayne's ex-wife. And so there's this very, let me just read this bit. This is from work. Quote, "There was no doubt in my mind. She was the woman we'd seen flying over the river. As nearly as I could tell, I'd wandered into some sort of dream that Wayne was having about his wife at his house, but I didn't say anything more about it. Because after all, in small ways, it was turning out to be one of the best days of my life, whether it was somebody else's dream or not. We turned in the scrap wire for $28 each at a salvage yard near the gleaming tracks at the edge of town and went back to the Vine. Who should be pouring drinks there but a young woman whose name I can't remember, but I remember the way she poured. It was like doubling your money. She wasn't going to make her employers rich. Needless to say, she was revered among us. I'm buying, I said. No way in hell, Wayne said. Come on. It is, Wayne said. My sacrifice. Sacrifice? Where had he gotten a word like sacrifice? Certainly I had never heard of it. He also does this thing in this story that he does in a number of these stories. And one of the things that makes it so artful, in my opinion, is, he carves out this vignette and it's potent and it's dark and it's human, it's funny, it's bizarre. And instead of drawing it to some kind of punchline like conclusion, he suddenly expands the scope of it. To get access to the full episode and other exclusive content, subscribe at patreon.com/artofdarkpod. Thank you.